Welcome to the Freelance Tribe. Here we talk with skilled freelancers about their professional journey. Stay tuned for real-life experiences to learn and actionable steps to take to improve your freelancing career. My name is Yuri. I'm a community builder at Code Control and 9am.works, and my guest is Lizzie Davey, a freelance writer for SaaS and E-com tech digital brands to grow their authority, visibility, and conversions with engaging, search-inspiring content, and a keen advocate for creative freelancers on a mission to add transparency around rates and pay in the sector. And today we'll discuss how should freelancers develop their rates throughout their careers. So welcome, Lizzie.
Hi, thank you. What an introduction. That was great.
Let's start with the easiest question, but the most important question. So, what are some common mistakes freelancers make when setting their rates at the beginning of their careers?
So I think I was definitely in this camp, but I think a lot of freelancers forget to account for their overhead. So we obviously don't get sick pay. Our taxes aren't paid for us. We have to pay them ourselves. And the mistake I made at the start was not accounting for any of this. So I would be charging close to kind of the minimum wage hourly rate that I was getting paid in my full-time job, and then having to be like, oh crap, I haven't accounted for taxes, sick pay, holiday pay, and all of that on top of it. So I think it's really difficult when you're going from employed to freelance to remember that there's all of that other stuff involved in your rate.
Yeah, it's so easy to forget about this because
Yeah,
it's always everything done for you. And but
exactly.
I would like to go a little bit out of rates. So also when you're a freelancer, you're wearing different hats. And when you're moving from employment to being a freelancer, you also have to remember about many, many things. So what was your experience when you started freelancing? How did you deal with all the sales, marketing, and other things?
I hated it. I felt incredibly overwhelmed. I just wanted to write. I just wanted to spend my days writing because that's what I loved. And then to realize that I was in charge of marketing and bookkeeping and sales, and all of that was a really kind of tough pill to swallow. Which is why I think for like the first 3 years of my career, I basically just worked through platforms like Upwork and
Mm.
Elance at the time, because I kind of didn't have to put myself out there and it was much easier. But then obviously the trap you fall into is the rates are really low and you really struggle to get out of that. So it was kind of comfortable, but not good for my career.
What helped you back then?
To get out of it, I started to grow my online presence. So I started posting a bit about it on Twitter and LinkedIn. And then clients outside of Upwork started noticing me. So I think I realized quite quickly that, oh, there are better other clients out there. I need to get off of these platforms.
Got it. So coming back to the rates. So basically you've told that you forgot about taxes, about all the other stuff. So how should
Mhm.
freelancers approach calculating their initial rates from the very scratch?
I think this is a really difficult question. And people have so many different like formulas for doing it, like figure out how much you want to earn each month and then break that down into hourly and stuff. But I think it's so hard when you don't know like how long things take you, or what you need to account for within that in that rate range, and what kind of the market is can bear with your rates. So I always say approach it as like a mini experiment at the start. So rates are fluid, pricing is fluid. You don't have to stick with them, and use it as an opportunity to be like, okay, I charged this for this project and it actually took me much longer and I actually didn't end up getting paid a lot for that. Um, I think as well, like at the time, I didn't know any other freelancers. I was kind of doing it on my own, but I think it's really helpful to speak to other freelancers, ask them what they're charging, ask them what their rates are for this, what their early rates were when they were starting out for this particular service or whatever. And then come to your own conclusion of what feels comfortable for you, what feels comfortable with kind of your overheads and your living expenses, and then iterate on that over and over again and just keep iterating. Like I'm still iterating now, 10 years later, and I know plenty of other freelancers are still iterating. So it's a journey. It is a journey.
What is the difference in rates between short-term and longer-term clients?
For me, I don't charge any different. For me, I learned a big lesson in the work still takes the same amount of time, regardless of whether it's a client you've been doing work with for a while or you're doing short term. So I did offer discounts for kind of what people will call retainer clients for a long time. But I just became resentful because I had to do that work every month and I was getting paid less than I would be for work with new clients or one-off clients. So for me, there is no difference, but I know some people will happily lock in a discount to get that kind of long-term work. And I think and I'm going to say this a lot, that it really comes down to what feels comfortable for you and what your circumstances are.
So you've told that work is taking the same time, but am I understanding it correctly that it came with the experience? Because I feel like when you are just starting, you can start with one, let's say, hourly rate, but the more you do things, the faster you become, the more you use tools, etc., etc. So the faster the works come. So is it in your case all the experience that you have?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think if we're talking about like the rates I charged at the start and the rates I'm charging now, like obviously there's a ton of experience. I know more about client challenges, so I can speak to those, which obviously makes you more valuable. But if we're talking about kind of clients that I've been working with for a long time, then like, yes, I do get quicker at doing work for them and I am better at kind of fulfilling the briefs because I know what they want, I know their customers, I know kind of all that information about them. But then also that still comes with the higher rate because I've taken the time to get this experience, to learn their brand, to understand their audience. Like it's better value for them as well to charge my higher rates because they get a freelancer who knows what they want and can deliver something that's published ready every time.
And how to explain it to a client? I mean that there is a big problem that I hear from experienced freelancers. That, for example, let's say they charge $200 per hour, and there is someone who charges, let's say, $100 per hour. But for this less experienced person, it will take 3 hours to make that. So at the end of the day, the client has to pay 300. And for this person, it will take like half an hour. So the client will have to pay $100. But when you start with rates, like, oh no, your rate's like twice higher than this person rates, I will hire them. So how to explain to client that you can really make work faster and better than someone who has lower rates?
I think it's really hard to explain that to a client who doesn't want to listen to it. And I think there's often the case where if a client does say that, they've already made up their mind that you're too expensive. And I think justifying it doesn't work. And I experienced this recently actually with a client who um, came to me and said that I was charging, I think it was triple the rate their other freelancer was. But for them, it was saving them time and money because they had to spend hours editing this other freelancer's work. So in
Mm.
real terms, my even though my price on paper was 3 times higher, it was actually costing them less to hire me than this other freelancer. Um, but I think until clients experience that and until they've been in that situation themselves, like all they see is that initial price tag. So it's a case of being like, okay, they're going to learn their lesson. And over the years, I've had so many clients who have gone with the cheaper option and then come back to me 6 months later and been like, okay, yeah, we made a mistake. We want to hire you now. We're ready to pay more to get better quality or to not have to spend hours editing.
So it's kind of like letting the clients learn the hard way. But
Yeah.
what if, but still, how to save clients from making this mistake?
I mean, all you can do is say this price range comes with like this experience. Look at my portfolio, and I think it's really important to have a really solid portfolio, really solid examples that you can send to say like this is the work that I've produced in the past. If this is the quality and caliber of work you want now, like this is the price that you have to pay for it, basically.
So talking about experience, coming back to experience. So usually, as far as I know, you start like with the lower rates and then you increase. At least at some point, you're like, okay, this is my rates, I'm working with them. But how should freelancers adjust their rates as they gain more experience or specialize in what they are doing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's like a one size fits all formula here, but I've heard people say increase your rates for every new client,
Mm.
or I think I don't do that, but maybe every 3 clients, every 3 new prospects, I will increase my rates. And every year I do kind of 2 rate increases across the board anyway. So my rate sheet gets updated, and any new clients that come in after that get the new rates. But I think like if we're talking in percentages, are we talking in percentages? I don't know. But maybe like 10% at a minimum each year increase. But I think, like I think at a point where clients are just saying yes and not questioning your rates anymore, that's the point where you should be like, okay, should I increase my rates? Like, am I underselling myself here?
How to ensure that you understand yourself?
When those rates need to increase?
Yeah.
I mean, that is one option when you've had many kind of new inquiries not question your rates at all. Another one is for me, when I see other freelancers who are charging more than me, who haven't been doing it as long, or maybe don't have as high kind of standing clients in their portfolio that I do, that gives me pause for thought. And I'm like, okay, am I underselling myself here? I think if you've worked on like particularly challenging projects or like particularly high caliber brands, that should also be a point where you're like, right, okay, I've got something really good to add to my portfolio here. That should definitely indicate a price increase for me.
Do you increase rates for existing clients?
Yes, and I didn't for the first 5 years. So I think there was 1.5 years in where I was charging like my new clients about £600 for a piece, and then I was still working with clients from 3 years back where I was charging them like £100 a piece, and it was just getting really, really confusing doing all the invoicing, and then I was getting really resentful of working with those early clients because I wasn't getting paid as much. So what I do now is I instigate 2 rate increases a year. So I do one at the end of the year, and then I do one at the start of the new UK tax year, which is April. And that's obviously in line with inflation. And then the one at the end of the year is in line with, okay, I look back at the year and I'm like, right, have I got pieces in my portfolio that warrants a rate increase? Have I worked with any clients this year that warrants a rate increase? So the end of the year one is more of like a personal reflection rate increase. And then the April one is like in line with everything else that's going up.
How do you communicate it to a client?
I just send an email, and I think most of my clients expect it now. It's definitely the ones that I've been working with for a while, but I will just send an email a couple of months in advance, just like, hey, just a heads up, my rates are going up from X to Y, effective as of this date. Let me know if you have any questions. I think there's a temptation to justify why our rates are going up. And what I say to freelancers who feel like that, because I've definitely felt like I've had to justify it, is to remember that employed people get a rate increase every year. Most people get a rate increase every year. Prices go up every year. And if you don't increase your rates, like you're essentially giving yourself a pay cut when that new tax year comes around.
Do clients ask you to justify?
I've never had a client ask to justify it. I've had clients say that's not within our budget right now. And I say, okay, how can we figure this out? Like, is there a way that we can carry on working together, maybe on less pieces? Or maybe if I really enjoy working with them, I'll be like, okay, let's review this again in like 6 months to see if you do have the budget then.
Sounds like you are not letting client go away.
No, unless like I'm like, actually, I really don't want to work with this client anymore, then I will take that opportunity to be like, okay, well, it looks like we're not a good fit anymore, so see ya.
I can imagine that, you don't want to work with a client and like, my rate increases like 10 times. And they're like, oh, okay, we can pay that. And like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that has happened before, like projects I get in where I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound very interesting. I'll be like, I'll just throw out what I call like a fuck it rate. And then sometimes they come back and they're like, yeah, cool, that's fine by us. And I'm like, oh shit, well, at least I'm getting paid well for it.
At least, yeah. So, I talk to many freelancers and to many colleagues in community building industry, and the imposter syndrome is a reality. So, the more people get experience, the more they think that they don't know anything. Somehow it works that way. So, and it leads to undervaluing their work. So I'm curious, how can freelancers benchmark their rates against industry standards to ensure that yes, I'm an expert, and yes, I'm getting paid exactly what I have to get paid?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. And I think this is where the community element comes into it, because obviously as freelancers, we're working in a vacuum, we're working in
Yeah.
isolation. So we only know our personal circumstances. We only know kind of what we're charging, what those rates are we're sending out in proposals, and only we know if we feel comfortable with those rates. Um, and I think the only way to kind of figure out if what you're charging is in line with the market standards is to speak to other freelancers, is to talk to freelancers who do exactly what you do and say, like, hey, what are you charging for this? Are you comfortable charging that? Like, what rate would you feel more comfortable charging? And then, of course, there are industry reports that come out every year that kind of solidify and give an average of what people are charging, which you can kind of use as a benchmark, but it takes out the kind of personal circumstance element from that. So I think using a combination of those reports and speaking to other freelancers, and then obviously like attempting to trust your gut, which I know is really hard, but like trying to figure out like, okay, it scared me sending that proposal with that price, but that's the price I really want to get paid. So I hope it pays off. I think like a combination of those three things is the way to do it.
And talking about the rates, as far as I know, and it's a reality once again, there are different rates for different countries, and freelancers nowadays work in like you can be anywhere and you can work with anyone anywhere. Usually, if it's like a remote work. So, how to compete with lower rates from freelancers from countries where they have less expenses, less taxes, and less social obligation? How do you deal with this?
I mean, I think it's something that's always going to be there, and there's not really a lot we can do because it's an external factor and it's nothing like it is what it is basically. And I think the only thing we can do is um, pitch ourselves to brands in the markets where we might get paid something that covers our living costs, or pitch ourselves as a freelancer who works specifically with, I don't know, like UK brands, US brands, or whatever, and make sure your portfolio has lots of kind of examples from companies within those markets. But other than that, like the reality is there are people who can afford to charge less, and that's personal circumstance. So not a lot we can do about it, unfortunately.
Yeah, just find better clients. And
Yeah.
also there is like this feast and famine cycle in freelancing. Some months are better, some months are worse. So how to include this into your rates? How do you include like the periods with no clients when you are planning your rates?
Yeah, I think this is where the buffer comes in on rates. So as well as like taxes, I think when you set a rate, whether you're charging a day rate, an hourly rate, or a project rate, when you're setting that, then on top of that, there needs to be taxes, sick pay, holiday pay, and then what I call kind of like your buffer, which is something that it's not going to cover like complete costs of having no work 1 month, but it should mean that if you do have no work 1 month, you're not going to be completely out of luck. Like you should be able to, and I think the key here is like what you pay yourself. So a lot of freelancers will be like, oh yeah, I've made like 3 grand this month, I'm going to spend it all immediately. Whereas I think it's really important, especially early on, to pay yourself a figure that you can comfortably bear every month, regardless of whether you have loads of work or not enough work. But yeah, it's what I call a buffer add on to your rate.
What is your formula? How do you calculate your rate?
Yeah. Mostly just like, I mean, it feels like I'm plucking numbers out of thin air, but I'm not, because obviously I've been doing this. This is my 12th year now. So I've been doing it for a long time. I know what the market can bear. I know what my standard of work and like what value that is to clients. I know mostly I have a relatively good idea of what other freelancers in my niche are charging. And I know how much I need to make each month to cover my expenses and my costs. So it's kind of a combination of all of those things. And like I said before, I'm still iterating. So it's never, okay, this is my rate and this is going to be my rate for the whole year. Like I will experiment when a new client comes in. I will be like, okay, I'm going to test out and see whether this rate works with them. So again, it's still a game of trial and error. Like it's always a game of trial and error.
What is the difference between hourly rate and value-based rate?
I always try and steer freelancers away from an hourly rate unless it's unless you're doing work that you can't kind of package up in a tangible format, because you end up punishing yourself. Like the better you get, the faster you get at the work, you end up punishing yourself. And I think it's just more stable for both sides if you say, okay, this is what I'm charging for this, rather than I charge this per hour and I'm not sure how long it's going to take. It might take me this long, but it might also take me this long. And then my go-to is always project-based or value-based, but I think value-based is more difficult to figure out because you don't always know what value that's bringing to clients. So for me, I'm writing blog posts for clients. I don't know how many people are coming to those blog posts and then going on to purchase or going on to sign up. Like it's difficult to kind of put a number on that, which is why I usually go project-based. But if you're doing something like a landing page where you can track the conversions, then that's where value-based can be really good.
And it sounds like you can have several landing pages for several clients, and then you can like, okay, this is like lower value page, this is middle value page, this is like the VIP value page, and then like see, okay, this person came from this page, okay, so they're ready to pay for that. Did you try something like that?
I did it. I used to do it for landing pages. And there was one year where I was kind of testing out different prices for that. But it's so hard to get the information from clients because it felt like once I delivered the landing page, like that was our contract completed, and like me checking in with them every now and again being like, hey, like what conversions did you get on that? It's just like annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's exactly what marketers and salespeople do.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So if you could give one piece of advice to a freelancer struggling with their rates, what would it be?
I think it goes back to it's like these rates you have now don't have to be your rates forever, and they will not be your rates forever. It's so hard when everyone else is kind of like a bit elusive about what they're charging to know whether what you're charging is like kind of on the mark or whether you're way off. But I think, yeah, if you treat it as an experiment and remember that you can change your rates, like you can increase them, you can try out new rates with new clients, like it feels far less restrictive and far less suffocating, knowing that you're not going to be stuck charging £50 a piece for the rest of your career.
Yeah, exactly. Lizzie, I wish to have the sky as the limit, but time is the limit. So the final question, what is your favorite food?
Oh, my favorite food is sushi, always.
Got it. Got it. Welcome to the sushi team. I would say sushi pizza team, but yeah, for now. So yeah. And what is the best way to connect with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn at Lizzie Davey, and I'm on Instagram, which is freelancemagic.co. And then I have the newsletter as well. So freelancemagic.co, and then you can click newsletter to receive that.
Got it. Lizzie, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And it's been such a pleasure to hear and learn from you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation.
And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button on 5 stars and share it with your friend. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.